This video is intended solely for educational and documentary purposes. It contains no ideology or propaganda. Ghost in the Atlantic. Summer 1944. The Atlantic Ocean. A storm brews on the horizon, and deep beneath the waves, a steel predator glides silently. Her name, U-505, a German Type 19C submarine, nearly 77 meters long, a crew of 59, capable of operating over 13,000 kilometers, a weapon of terror patrolling the vast ocean expanse. But this U-boat was different, not just in its design, but in its cursed fate. From the very beginning, things went wrong. Mechanical failures on the first patrol, forced back to dock. The second voyage, another failure. Skippers rotated, crew morale sank. U-505 became the problem child of the Kriegsmarine. Shadows of intelligence. The Americans knew, they listened, intercepted, predicted. And in 1944, as the tide of war turned toward the Allies, U.S. naval intelligence saw its chance. Not to destroy, but to capture. The plan was classified. Its objective, seize an enemy U-boat, intact, with every secret still on board. It sounded insane. That was its strength. The group formed was Task Group 22.3. It included the escort carrier USS Guadalcanal and 5 destroyer escorts, Chatelain, Pillsbury, Jenks, Pope, and Flaherty. At its head, Captain Daniel V. Gallery, charismatic, sharp, and obsessed with a breakthrough. "We don't just need a win, we need to get inside their system," he said. The hunt begins. June 4, 1944, morning. The Atlantic was choppy, sea state 4, clouds hung low, visibility moderate. A scout plane from the Guadalcanal spotted a strange trail on the surface. Destroyers sprang into action. 11:10 a.m. Contact. Chatelain's radar and sonar locked onto a submerged object. It was a U-boat. The order came fast. Chatelain dropped depth charges. Explosions rocked the sea. Oil, debris, and air bubbles surged upward. But then, silence. And then, U-505 surfaced. Her captain, Harold Lang, wounded, gave the evacuation order. No fight, just chaos. Sailors leapt into the water, some wounded, some in shock. But the self-destruct system hadn't been triggered. The Americans saw the opportunity, the only one of its kind in the entire war. "It was quiet," one Pillsbury sailor recalled, "just the creaking of metal as we came alongside." The seas in seconds. An 8-man boarding party scrambled onto the slick deck. Time was critical. Any moment the U-boat could slip beneath the waves. Inside, darkness, flooded compartments, the smell of fuel, seawater, and fear. The team moved fast. Valves closed, explosives disabled. In the dark, fingers found the main circuit switch. The auto-scuttling mechanism shut off. No one spoke German, but every man understood what was at stake. Then, a hum. The pumps kicked in. The hull held steady. U-505 wasn't sinking. A moment of silence. Then, elation. U-505 had been captured. Secrets beneath the steel. On board, Enigma, the crown jewel, the cipher machine thought to be impenetrable by the Nazi command. Also recovered, radio intercept logs, technical schematics, officers' personal records, torpedo samples. Every document was a potential weapon. Information from U-505 unlocked enemy movement, helped reroute Allied convoys, saved thousands of lives across the Atlantic theater, and all of it was buried in secrecy. The submarine was towed to Bermuda. The crew, isolated. No Red Cross, no communication. Even German command believed the boat was lost. It was one of the most daring intelligence coups in American naval history, and perhaps the quietest. U-505 became the first enemy vessel captured by the U.S. Navy in combat since 1815. But that is another story. The capture that wasn't supposed to happen. June 4, 1944, the Atlantic Ocean, just before noon. U-505 surfaced, not to strike, but because she was forced up, after a direct hit from depth charges. This was the critical moment. The Americans were ready. The destroyer Chatelaine had its guns locked on target, but orders from the USS Guadalcanal were clear: hold fire. If they were lucky, the sub could be taken alive. On the surface, chaos. German sailors abandoned ship in panic. A few were injured, some jumped overboard, others clung to the railing. American motor launches raced toward the submarine. Their mission: stop the crew from sinking it. Every second counted. A boarding party launched from the destroyer Pillsbury. Leading them was Ensign Albert David, 22 years old. He didn't speak German, but he had orders: board, secure, and take control. Inside the sub, the hull was slick. The steel groaned. Inside, steam, water, and total confusion. The Americans reached the control room. Signal charts, navigation maps, coded logs. One sailor grabbed a heavy metal box, nearly slipping. It was the Enigma machine. "Check the engine room," someone shouted. They moved deeper inside. Machinery roared. Water poured in. One man shut down valves. Another searched for the scuttling system. Every label was in German. No one knew what exactly to pull. But luck was on their side. They located and disabled the scuttling mechanism. Pumps were still working. The sub could be saved. They had minutes, maybe less. But U-505 stayed afloat. Intelligence goldmine. U-505 was more than a vessel. It was a vault of secrets. In one cabin, radio intercept logs. In another, navigation charts showing recent U-boat routes. A sailor from the USS Pope cracked open a small safe. Inside, another cipher key sheet. That discovery alone would later enable the Allies to decrypt portions of the Kriegsmarine's Atlantic transmissions. "This is priceless," a Bletchley Park codebreaker would later say. Everything was carefully boxed. The sub was secured and taken in tow, heading for Bermuda. A secret locked away. On shore, total silence. No one could know the sub was captured. German prisoners were isolated. No letters, no contact. They lived in legal limbo, ghosts of war. The press was gagged. Even many U.S. Navy officers were kept in the dark. Only years later would the full story surface. Back then, silence served the war effort. The outcome. The capture of U-505 was a singular event, the only time the U.S. Navy took a German U-boat intact on the high seas. It wasn't just a tactical success, it was an intelligence windfall. The Enigma machine, the documents, the codes, all gave the Allies a decisive edge in the Battle of the Atlantic. But beyond that, it was a triumph of courage, speed, and unconventional thinking. In the fog of war, they kept their nerve and changed the course of naval intelligence forever. After the capture, for nearly 3 days, U-505 was towed through the Atlantic toward Bermuda. The seas were rough, the wind relentless, the resistance from the hull constant, but she stayed afloat. The USS Pillsbury remained close, risking everything. One misstep, one failed connection, and the submarine could vanish beneath the waves. On board, the crew stood constant watch. Pumps droned. Compartments were checked one by one. It felt like walking a minefield. Every hatch, every valve could be booby-trapped. We had no idea what might be rigged to blow, so we opened everything with extreme caution, recalled Lieutenant Manner. First encounter with Enigma. Cryptanalysts arrived quickly. Their focus was singular, the radio compartment. Inside stood the Enigma machine, but even more valuable than the machine itself were the cipher sheets lying nearby. These tables made Enigma truly dangerous. Each machine used daily keys, changed every 24 hours. Without these sheets, the device was useless. When we opened the third locker and saw those neatly folded sheets, we knew this was the jackpot. Photographic documentation began immediately. Every page, every note captured. A makeshift lab was set up on board, complete with lighting, magnifiers, and documentation tools. The Americans feared one thing, that the Germans might realize U-505 was not destroyed and change the codes. Secrecy was paramount. Interrogations. The German prisoners were held in strict isolation. They were treated in line with the Geneva Convention. Food, medical care, decent quarters, but no letters, no visitors, not even a hint of where they were. Their commander, Harold Lang, remained silent and distant. His personal belongings were examined separately: letters, photographs, a diary. No crucial intelligence was found. But all signs pointed to one thing. The crew's morale had been deteriorating long before their final patrol. They weren't zealots, they were tired. Broken men, noted one U.S. officer. Why didn't the sub explode? U-505 was supposed to self-destruct. Charges had been installed in the engine room and control center, designed to obliterate equipment and eliminate secrets. But in the chaos, no one triggered them, or chose not to. Some historians argue that Captain Lang never gave the order. Maybe he froze under pressure. Maybe he knew resistance was pointless. This made U-505 unique. In most other cases, German submariners scuttled their vessels, even at the cost of their own lives. But not this time. That's what made her such an extraordinary catch. Post-war fate. U-505 remained under lock and key until the war ended in 1945. After that, she was moved to Norfolk. No longer a weapon, just a relic. In 1954, after extensive debate, she was gifted to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. Piece by piece, she was transported, rebuilt, and restored. Today, U-505 is one of the few surviving Kriegsmarine submarines in the world. Thousands of visitors come each year. Many don't realize they're standing before a real war machine, not destroyed, but captured. A machine that surrendered and changed the war's course. It wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point. Quiet, uncelebrated, but monumental.